So I started preparing for SQE1 1 month ago, and my exam is in 6 weeks, and I'm working full time. And I spoke to a bunch of people even before I started SQE1 just to get a good idea of what should I be doing right. And I still made loads of mistakes. I spoke to future trainees who otherwise did really well in their exams, but then they failed and people lost their training contracts. And so the whole point of this video is I wanted to share the stuff that even after I spoke to people, I wish I knew when I first started. And so if you're about to start SQE, you know what you should be doing from day one. The first mistake I made was studying to finish, not to understand. So I quickly decided at the start of SQE, watching the lectures felt too passive, and I had all these textbooks. The best thing I could do personally was I'm going to just try to memorize all the information in these textbooks. And someone very helpfully said to me, you can kind of plan this out if you just have a spreadsheet with all the chapters across all the textbooks, and you could determine, okay, how many chapters do I need to do each day to complete it? So as I tend to do, I put this into AI. I just gave it the PDFs of the chapters, and I asked it to make a study plan to make sure I comfortably finished before the exam started. And so this roughly said, like, I have to do 3 chapters a day, every single day. Now, the problem with that is I had in my head, okay, I'm going to do 3 chapters every day. And I got too laser focused on that as the target. And so sometimes, say if I had a busy day with work, I would focus on just finishing the chapter without checking, am I actually understanding this? Am I remembering it? Am I like asking questions when I get confused? And so the big takeaway I would pass on here is try to make sure you understand what you read, because you are so much more likely to remember it. If I found a chapter took longer time, I would spend more time on it even if I didn't finish my 3. And often for me, that means, say, a complex topic like solicitors' accounts. It was just quite hard for me to understand immediately. And so I put stuff into AI and keep asking questions until I really understood it, even if, okay, maybe I only did 2 chapters that day. The other takeaway for me here is really spending more time on your weakest areas. The main reason behind that is some things I just noticed I pick up quite quickly, like criminal law, whereas some things like business law and practice, there's just so much to memorize. And I know I'm going to regret as I get closer to the exam if I don't really drill the weakest stuff, rather than just feeling good because I make progress on the easier stuff. The second mistake I made, this is one of my biggest, is writing bad flashcards took time from me every single day. So when I started the SQE, someone told me they found Anki really helpful, which is basically an online flashcard platform, which you can write flashcards and then test yourself using spaced repetition. So it'll keep resurfacing your flashcards every single day. And the idea is that gets stored in your long-term memory. What I didn't realize is I had no idea how to write a good flashcard. Someone recommended this 3-hour video by Ali Abdul.
You're a student of any sort and you have to memorize stuff, you need to be using Anki because it is just absolutely incredible.
Which is very helpful in terms of understanding how to use Anki. But I didn't know what information to put on it. So say after work when I was tired, I would write flashcards that looks like this, which is kind of just copying information from the textbook. And then I would try to remember like multiple parts per flashcard. And when it comes to, say, a week later and you're trying to remember, okay, I have no idea what this refers to. I have no idea which parts of this I need to remember. But also, most importantly, like if I do that flashcard, I'm not remembering anything. I'm just kind of filling in the gap. And so what I had to do afterwards is I had to rewrite all of my bad flashcards. And so the rule I found for a flashcard is it should only ask questions, and it should only require you to resurface a very small amount of knowledge. Ideally, that's often just one piece of knowledge. Sometimes, like in this example, there's 3 reasons, but it's very obvious what the question is asking you to do. And so what you want to do is, as you read through your textbook, if you understand it, realize I don't need to make a flashcard for that. And if you don't understand it, just making very precise flashcards with questions that test a very small amount of knowledge. And there is this guide, the 20 rules for formulating knowledge, that I found really helpful in terms of understanding, okay, what do I need to learn to make a good flashcard? And so I'll give you an example now of how I use Anki. So my deck is called the SQE. And if I click study now, it's going to give me a question. And then if I press the spacebar, and I highly recommend getting used to the keyboard shortcuts, it just makes this faster, It's going to give me my 2 answers in this case, and then I rate it. So I press 1 if I want to rate it again. That means I just didn't get it, and it'll come back to me in a minute. If I press 2, that means hard. I usually use that if I was close, and it'll come back to me in 6 minutes. I press 3 if it was good. That's, okay, I got the answer, and it will come back to me in 10 minutes in this case. And then easy, I just never use. Usually it just takes too long to resurface a question. And so let's say I got this right. I press 3. Immediately goes to the next question. Okay, so imagine the question is, what happens if a public company trades without a trading certificate? Then the question's asked, I try to answer it, press the space bar, and I get the answer. And so this is a much better question. It's asking one question, one information I need to remember, and it's short so I can do it fast. I'll also show you how to make questions. So I'm going to press A to add a new question. Let's say I write a question in here like, what is the mens rea of Section 18 offences against the Persons Act? So this is good because it's asking me to remember one specific thing. And let's say I use a basic card. This is one of the options I do. It's going to show me the answer on the other side. So let's say the mens rea is intention to cause GBH. And I'm going to add a tag here for criminal law and press add. So if I show you how that looks now, it says there's one new card to study, and it asks me the question, I press spacebar, and it gives me the answer. And then I rate it. There's another option which I use almost exclusively now. It's called close cards. And so let's ask the same question again. So what is the mens rea for Section 18? In actually the same card, I'm going to put the answer. So it's intention to cause GBH. And the reason I do this is, one, it's very fast to just make the card. So if I press Command-Shift-C, it immediately turns that into the thing that shows up on the reverse. But what's also really helpful is on the back of the card, you can add any more information that would just be useful for you later on. Let's say, for example, it was really important to me to put a case as an example. That's often what I do it for, or images from the textbook that's easy to remember, or something I commonly get wrong. Let's say, for example, I need to make it clear it's GBH means really serious harm. So here we've got the question, what is the mens rea for Section 18? Here I just press space. We've got the answer, but also we've got the extra information. So that makes it really quick to do. The third mistake I made is not asking, is this actually going to come up in the exam? So one hard part about the SQE is there are 14 subjects if you include ethics. And so that's split across 2 exam days, FLK1 and FLK2. If you open up the textbook, there's like so much information to remember, especially for some subjects like business law and practice. Now, when I first started doing this, what I had in mind is, okay, wow, like I need to learn all of this. I'm going to make like hundreds of flashcards. That's going to be really painful when you do your Anki questions. But also it's really important to realize a lot of this doesn't actually come up. And so you don't need to remember the names of cases usually, or like legislation in the Companies Act. But something you would need to remember is like the model articles. And so what I do is I constantly ask myself, is this likely to come up in the SQE? This is especially important if you have textbooks that are wordy. There's a lot of background information that, okay, I might read through. It's useful to kind of understand some of the cases as I read through it, but I know I don't need to memorize them. There's also, on our SQE forum, there are really helpful posts on this. This example, just recently, an applicant who just did SQE1, they posted a really detailed breakdown for all of the subjects of what tends to come up in the exam. So now what I do when I review a chapter, I'm just reading it. And if it's something obvious, I won't make a flashcard for it. If it's not obvious, I know I would get it wrong, or it's something I need to remember, then I turn it into a flashcard. So I end up having like 20 to 30 flashcards per chapter. So here is an example of a paragraph about undue influence from the textbook. And the old Jason would have put all of this into a flashcard. Actually, now I realize as I read this, so what it's saying here is there are certain relationships where there is a presumption of undue influence because of the relationship you have. And so for me, it's quite obvious that that does apply in a doctor-patient case, let's say parents and children under 18. It's not obvious that there is that presumption to me when it's a religious advisor and a follower, or that it doesn't apply to a husband and wife. And so if I show you now how I would make a flashcard out of this, here is the flashcard I created. And so the question is, which of these is not a presumption of trust and confidence for undue influence? The reason I'm asking this type of question is because I know for the exam, it's not about remembering the words, it's applying it. So I'm asking myself a question like this. The options are religious advisor and follower, solicitor and client, and husband and wife. Now, the reason this is good is it's testing me to realize, okay, actually, it's husband and wife. And actually, this one, religious advisor and follower, does have the presumption. And so I'm trying to test myself on things that just aren't obvious to me. The fourth mistake I made is leaving practice questions too late. So my daily plan at the moment is I write flashcards for 3 chapters a day. I do Anki on my commute or in my breaks. And then in the evenings, as of yesterday, I've switched to doing questions every evening. Now, I actually heard very early on it's important to do questions, but I found this hard to fit in because I'm learning material for the first time and doing Anki. But I regret now not doing this sooner, which is why I'm talking about it now. And that's because the SQE is about applying your knowledge. It's not going to ask you to remember just like definitions of stuff. And so, for example, you're not going to be asked to define Section 18 of the Offences Against the Persons Act, but what you will get is a situation where someone commits serious harm and you have to decide, does this meet the requirements? And so the reason you want to do questions is to take what you learn through the rules, the Anki, the practice, but then actually apply it to something that translates to the exam. And the reason I'm doing this now is, okay, I know I've got a short amount of time. I want to get used to the questions as early as possible. Also, most importantly, I want to work out what I keep getting wrong, turn those into flashcards and keep practicing it. What I don't want to do is get to the exam and realize, okay, I just don't want certain topics to come up because I hate them. I just want to make sure I take the time to know them well. My next mistake was treating mistakes like a failure. I sometimes get annoyed at myself because I'll do an Anki session and I'll be like, this flashcard is awful. Why did I write it like this? Or I'm so behind, I should be doing more questions. One thing I've learned is making mistakes is good. As long as you're like willing to confront and fix it early. And so with Anki, if we go to like one of my flashcards that just aren't good, here's an example where I have a flashcard, but I actually haven't asked any questions on it. The answer is in the same flashcard. And what I do as I'm going through that, if I know it's a bad flashcard, the nice thing is I can flag it. So if you hit Command 1, you can flag it as red. And then when I have some time, I'll go over all the cards I have flagged and rewrite them. And this will just save myself so much more time later. And so at the end of every week, I find it very helpful to think about, am I doing this in the way I should be doing? What am I avoiding? What should I change? And that's what's made me realize, okay, I want to rewrite some flashcards or I want to do more questions. So you want what I call like really fast iteration cycles, which is I want to learn as quickly as possible what I'm doing wrong so I can fix it. What you don't want to do is say, okay, I've committed to writing all the chapters into flashcards. I'm going to spend months doing that. And then you get to the end of the period and you realize, actually, those flashcards, I don't remember them or I haven't done questions. Lastly, this is something I'm still working on, is letting flashcards become a chore. So Anki, when I used to have the bad flashcards, was just really painful to do. There's a few things that weren't obvious to me that I'll share about how to use it. One is that it should be designed to do it fast. What I was doing at the start is because I had such long flashcards, it's taking me like a minute to remember. Whereas the idea is, okay, I've got 10 seconds to make a decision. Do I know it? Okay, I'm going to answer it. If I don't, I'm going to press again, resurface it. I just want to get through as many as possible and do it every single day. Second is realizing, okay, I don't necessarily have to sit on my computer formally to do it every single time. I'll do it now on my commute, on my phone, sitting outside. These are like really helpful ways for me to just partly like get out of the environment where it feels stressful to actually do it, but also do it in a way that I can just feed it into many sessions over the course of my day. Next is being honest with myself. It's really easy to cheat Anki. It's really tempting to be like, okay, I hate this card, but I'm just going to mark it as good because I don't want to deal with it again. You always must press again if you don't understand it or rewrite it. And then lastly on AI, I actually thought I was going to use AI much more than I actually did. The best way I use it at the moment is I have a project called the SQE. It can draw information from the PDFs to give me the example I need for the SQE, not general information I don't need or information I can't trust. And so if I go to the SQE project, you'll see the sources. I've added the textbooks. I've also added things like the Companies Act, the model articles, anything that I think it would be useful. Then I can ask it like a question. If I give an example, what is the test of a primary victim in psychiatric harm in tort. And it's going to pull this information from the right section of the right textbook and give me an answer. And so it's read the document and it's given me the information. There are 2 tests in this case. The person must have been in the actual area of danger or have reasonably believed they were in danger. What's helpful sometimes is it will also reference extra information. Sometimes it gives me flashcards like it did in this one. And that's because I've given it context as to, I'm writing flashcards, I'm studying the SQE. Here's how I'd like you to give me the information. Okay, that's it. 1 month in, I've no doubt I'll have more lessons once I'm 2 months in. A special thank you to Lawrence in particular for all of the advice he gave me when I started the SQE. And lastly, I want to give a shameless plug to our SQE Forum because it's completely free and it's designed to get other people who pass the SQE to share their advice. So as I showed, there's this huge post on someone who passed who shares what comes up in each of the different papers. There are people who have the exam coming up that are talking about how they're revising and studying. I have my own thread on the lessons. And if you're starting for every single cycle, we'll have a discussion thread where you can talk to other people doing the SQE. I'll keep sharing everything we've learned. The whole idea is you've worked really hard often to get a training contract or self-fund the SQE, and you shouldn't have to worry that you're not going to pass and maybe lose that training contract or impact your chances. So what we want to do at TCLA is make sure you have all the advice you need so it becomes a much less stressful year and that you pass the exam.